Hey Pusnet, new little video. On this one is for the self-reliance project. And this one, what I want to talk about is mode of communication and the antenna that comes with them. That's kind of what I've been thinking about lately to get the kit prepared. And so here's the philosophy, and I wanted to have your opinion as well on it. And so let's get through it and see what people think and stuff. So here's something I found on the internet on the distance that most radio have. So as you can see here, HF has the longest distance, and then it comes to VHF, UHF, depending on the wattage that you have, and then you have the MERS, and then the MERS and GMRS is at the end over here. A lot of people will buy those ones because they're the cheapest and they're easy and you don't need license and things like that. But you'll see through my presentation the case that I'm trying to make that maybe there's a better solution to those. So the first thing is you have to know that everything that is on this list here, that is HF, VHF, MERS, or all those, they send waveform. And so when you send RF waveform out there, that means that one, those can be catch if you have the proper material for that. So either if I have a HF receiver, that means I can receive those waves because nobody they're not secure communication. And second, that means that every time that I talk or press on that button or I release those waveform outside, that means they can be pinpoint to my. So if you have the gear for that, that means I can find where those came from and walk towards that. And so when we talk about those, we need to keep this in communication, that when we're going to be talking about, most people, they'll be mostly in the VHF and UHF. I would say like 85-90% of the population out there, that's what they have, because they have the UV5R, which is cheap radio. They'll have the MERS because they carry them, and they're cheap radio. Some may have the CB because again you can have them on eBay and have the cheap. HF, you're starting to talk about bigger money, and mostly those will be the amateur radio band or people that are a little bit more serious about the radio communication. So that means that when you stick to the HF, there's less people that would have those radios for. And therefore, either they're more serious, either like they if they want to do you some harm, they're more serious about it, or they're more a bigger community and they're ready to help you. So basically, I think you get a little bit more versus the general population would have the middle one here. So when we talk about close range, what I was thinking, there's two systems that I was thinking about. Because GMRs and everything, the distance is very limited. They're kind of, for the communication they bring, they're a little bit on the expensive side, and they don't provide any security. I was thinking there's two systems that could be useful in our setup. Either the field phone, so just like they use in the army, and those old phone, and basically you need to create your own, a little bit like the can that we used to use when you're a kid with a string at the end. But here it's basically phone connection, and you set up the wire and from the outside and everything, and then when you pick up the phone, the other person can talk with you. And mesh is a little bit the field phone of the 21st century, but it can send also more information. It can send digital pictures, computers, and it can do a whole bunch. So the field phone seems nice, but the problem is it must be bulky, right? Well, I just found this system that could maybe make it a little bit more affordable and portable as well. And there'll be the link down below. And basically what it is, it's just a system that any phone that you can find, so that you scavenge or you carry with you, you hook it up on your system, and then after that you have literally a field phone system. This can be charged with a 12 volt, different batteries, It can be held off by a single battery, and whole bunch of different system as well. So I could see that being an advantage because it doesn't take much weight. Would be easy to carry. You could scavenge and find stuff and basically rebuild your whole system and everything. And now your communication will be safe because you don't send RF. Nobody would know that you're talking or communicating, and unless they break down, like either you get one of your phone or your I don't know if they can hook it up through the cable themselves, but it would be a little bit more safer than sending waveform out there. The other one would be the mesh. This one still could be catch, but because you're the higher frequencies, it's more the amateur radio people that use that stuff. So you have to have a little bit more knowledge. You have to have different gear. You have to have different setup. But one of the advantage of this is that you could create your own kind of internet, so your intranet. And that means that you could recuperate, like for example, during those disasters, a lot of people would have their cellular phone, but they wouldn't be useful because their towers is down and everything. But if you connect to the wireless network that you have just created, that means that you could reuse all those phones for communication purpose. So that would be one of the advantages. But one of the big disadvantages of this is that it's very weather dependent. So for example, if there's a lot of humidity and water and everything, those communication can be compromised. Like the communication doesn't work well, like through a dense forest or something like this, that can be also compromise the communication. So there's a little bit more to it about it, but some of those little devices are pretty cheap now, like $78-$90. You can have like your own system that you could set up between and create like your own mesh system. So I thought that maybe that could be another venue with it. For medium to long distance, a lot of people will use, like I was saying, VHF, and some people will use the HF, mostly the amateur radio, because those radio are starting to talk about, like, I mean, you can get like again the UV5R for $30, but don't look for a HF thing at $30. They're usually starting more around like the $300-$400 to start with, and they're limited about what they can do and everything. There's other ways that you could talk HF, and we'll talk a little bit more about those when we talk a little bit more later in the kit. But communication for HF could be possible. One of the disadvantages of VHF, like I was saying, a lot of people would have this, and so you're not as safe, and people could pinpoint your distance. I mean, HF you could still, but people would need better equipment for that. Is that you need a structure, so they're structure dependent. So either you need a repeater on the top of a mountain if those two people wants to talk about, or you need a sort of infrastructures. There'll be a video from guerillacomm that shows a little bit scenario what would happen and things like that for his communications. But that infrastructure, that means if it's down, you have to put it there. So for example, if you would be in a situation like this where two people would need, you would have to put either a simplex repeater or duplex repeater on the top of a mountain so that everybody could talk about it. Without this, nobody could really chat with and stuff. So that means that, yeah, you are dependent on the infrastructure itself. But then HF, right? It's only for talking to other people in another country. Well, not completely. So as you can see here, there's different ways of communicating through HF. So the most ones that we always talk about is the skywave. So that means I put my antenna and I try to do this little bounce right over here. And most of the time, there's two ways that you can polarize your communication with the antenna. You can either put it vertical or horizontal, or vertical. And vertical is mostly VHF because that's where it goes and everything, and it propagates. But you can still put an HF, and I have one here. You can put an antenna vertical HF. it limits your ground, your communication. But as you see here, what they call surface wave, that would be a way that you can communicate. So that means still in a pretty decent sides you could talk about. And I'll put a video by commpreppers that discuss this concept, and I really like that. One advantage of using HF, like I was saying, is that not as many people would have those communications. So everybody would have their UV5R and the bubble pack and their scans and everything, but HF, you need special gear to be able to monitor. And even if you monitor one frequency, that doesn't mean that you can get the second one, because you can talk on what we call split. So you can talk on two different frequencies. So that means you can add security by talking HF. But that means then you need like special antennas and everything. Not so much. So in the SOTA world, a lot of the time most of the people, what they'll carry is what they call an nvis antenna. nvis means for how you feed the antenna. So you can feed it from the middle, 3/4 of the way, or towards the end of it. The advantage of the nvis is that you just need one point, and all those ways that you can set it up is all different ways that you can communicate with people. So for example, in an inverted V or sloper or vertical, all you need is one point of communication. So the verticals that is right over here, that means that you could talk to people pretty near your camp in the HF mode, even if you need to talk to people in a further distance or listen further distance. All you would have to do is change your setup, for example, for a sloper or an inverted V, depending of what you want to do and the advantage of each of them and disadvantage that each of them have. And all this with a 40-meter antenna. But the advantage of having wire antennas with some tuners is that also now you can communicate on the 20-meter band. So that means you can receive. And with 20 and 40 meters, when you talk with those two, you can pretty much cover all communication, days and night. And on the 40 meters, that means you can also do nvis during the day. 80 meters is better for the night, but with what my plan will be was to use two 40-meter antennas, connect them together, and now you have an 80 meters. So if you need to communicate with nvis on 80 meters, my idea was to use two 40 meters. And by having 40 meters times 2, that means if you do not need to communicate at night with nvis, that means now you have two 40 meters antennas in your system. That means one could talk, one could receive. Because in the kit also you'll have like things like HF receiver or scanner or shortwave radio. So that means you could catch what the other person is trying to receive. So if I just want to send message for somebody else to receive, that means with two antennas, that means I got two stations. That means that the kit becomes very can move the component with it. So anyway, that was my quick presentation that I wanted to know and the ideas that is coming, and I wanted to guys have and would like to have your opinions and stuff and see with the discussion what it'll bring, and I'll talk to you soon.